v.h.s.x? What do you mean?
Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today I wanted to react and have a discussion about a video from ScottJund titled Dead by Daylight's Angel Killer Won't Be Dash Slop. So I'm interested to hear the take on this. With the Grimoire being sort of, I think, almost out the door already with the voting and everything. I think by this point, I'm a bit concerned of what we're actually going to receive. Now, obviously, from what I understand, it is going to be an angel killer of some kind. From what I understand, it is going to be an angel killer of some kind. So I am a bit concerned with how it's going to turn out, because obviously, if the control is going to be the highest voted, we're probably going to get another garbage trap killer, which is very unfortunate. On the other hand, we don't know what torment could be, and at least we can say that if at least from the three things that we can see here, it says something about immortal eye, which is you can see people. I feel like that's not going to do anything. Stalking, no. Like, we already seen how terrible Myers and Ghostface have been in the past. Honestly, we do not need more stalking killers. Those are garbage. Like, we don't need that. And we don't need trap killers, because as you can see from the past, they have just made awful trap killers. They're all terrible, which is sad, you know what I mean? So the only thing that made the most sense to me was to go for something like that's chase focused. So I think I went for the punishing heart choice, I think, if I was selecting a vote. But regardless, let's get into the topic.
As a little aside about the phrase slop, I originally was kind of annoyed by it. It just kind of gave off the vibes of like an elite movie critic just going like, this Marvel movie is driveling slop and good days. Like, it just had that overall just smug vibe, so I kind of hated it. But
I agree with Scott in that point right there. I will say, I feel like it's been overused at this point, and it's just really, like, it's not creative. Like, come up with better terms.
now that I'm seeing it used, like, ironically and more in comedic ways, it's actually starting to get pretty fucking funny to me. Like, I heard people describe Souls games as roll slop, and I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. I get it now. So, dash slop is the term we're talking about here. I'm not sure who coined it. I think Pixel Bush claims to have coined it. Whatever, either way, I actually think it's a pretty funny phrase now. But dash slop is basically those killers that have a fast movement ability, typically in a straight line. You know, about half the killers in the game kind of do this. And it is considered slop because it's a safe, effective strategy that most people will enjoy in some way. It's just a very safe thing to do.
That, to me, it makes the most sense to do with behavior. They've been releasing a lot of stinkers for the past couple of chapters, especially when it comes down to the original killers. Skull Merchant, terrible. Knight, terrible. Like, Houndmaster, terrible. All very negatively received, as we've seen so far. So I would think that they would want to at least have an original killer that's going to be something that people want. Obviously, the most popular characters that aren't dash killers as of late have been like licenses, or just even other characters have just been non-licensed content that has been quite well received. And DBD knows that. But if they can at least drop something that is an original chapter and people will like, I think that they need to do something that would get themselves the most favor, especially because they just have this knack for just making terrible killers for some reason. So either way, and as I've mentioned even earlier, like, trap killers have already in the past been terrible. Hag and Trapper both are extremely just low tier and just unfun for me personally. I would say that it just doesn't work for me. I just enjoy characters that have a little bit more agency as to what actually happens when I play when I use a power or when I actually do anything. That's not to say that Trapper's a terrible. No, Trapper is technically low tier, but I wouldn't say he's unfun for everybody. Obviously, there's plenty of people that love Trapper, but objectively, he's just, you know, yeah, I think you need to have a certain playstyle with that kind of character. Same thing with Hag. Obviously, I don't think the majority even like Hag at this point. And I think some people have mentioned Singularity as considered a trap killer, but I don't really think he has traps, honestly. honestly, I don't know how to describe Singularity, because he places down things, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily trapping anything, because usually traps allow you to kind of immobilize or slow them down or to do something similar. But I guess Hag kind of appears in different places with a teleport, so I guess it technically is a trap killer. So maybe I was looking at it a bit too literally, but regardless, the other concern I had obviously was the fact that they were describing the immortal eye as stalking begets torment. That is very concerning, because as like I've said as well, like, you know, Myers has already been consistently a low tier for years, like years, and he still is a low tier. Like, regardless of him being slightly adjusted, he's still low tier, and I don't imagine his rework, when it ever decides to drop, is going to really do much for him. Just because of the track record we have with behavior, they just really are not super great at keeping the core of the character that makes him the most interesting, in my opinion. Now, I will give them credit where it's due. They did actually make Freddy quite interesting to play. I don't play him as much anymore, but I will admit that it is a lot better, considering that he went from a literal D tier killer to at least B tier. Is definitely a nice change. Like, I want to see more killers do that. I want to see C tiers start going up to B. I want to see D tiers going up to B tier, or even A tier. Like, let's start pushing up these killers so they're a lot less terrible to play. That'd be exciting. But let's continue.
Which is fair, because that is true. Most of the most liked killers in the game, like Billy and Wesker and stuff like that, especially to go against, are dash slop. It's used in a derogatory but kind of self-aware manner, to where we kind of acknowledge, yeah, but most of the fun killers do have some type of variant of that. When I say
that's 100% true, though. As I hate to say it, but I do agree with Scott here, because a lot of the characters that a lot of survivors would find fun are dashes. Like, they like going against Wesker because he can miss shots, like, or miss dashes rather, miss grabs. They like going against Billy because he can miss his dashes. You know what I mean? They like going against characters like similar to that, where they can miss. And then, you know, now obviously on the other hand, you also have Blight and Kaneki, but that's a whole nother discussion. But in general, like, you know, those few that do have dashes are more, you know, played and enjoyed on both ends. So to me, the safe choice would make the most sense for behavior to choose. However, I don't imagine that this original chapter, quote unquote, is going to be very well received. As cool as it sounds, like, it would be interesting to have an angel killer. Like, that would be incredible. I would want to see that. I would hope that I would enjoy the character, because it's been chapter after chapter I have just not enjoyed these characters. So hopefully, just hopefully, we'll get something interesting this time.
Say fun going forward in this video, I'm trying to talk about universal fun for the entire game, because there can be like control-based killers that are fun to play as, but they're almost impossible to make them fun to go against, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here. So the 4 categories that we had to choose from were basically stealth, control, torment, and dash slop. So it seems like dash slop has been removed from the running, and it is not going to be a dash killer, which is
Rest in peace, all the dash enjoyers. Like, I don't even play any dash killers myself, so I was hoping that maybe there'd be a new killer that does have a dash that I might actually want to play, but unfortunately not. It was removed from the running, so now we're left with either a garbage stealth killer having to stalk people, which, as I've said before, Ghostface has been historically garbage. Like, Myers has been historically garbage. Like, I don't want to add a brand new killer that once again falls into the D tier line. It just is unfortunate. Even C tier would be unfortunate. It's like, damn, like another one? Like, there's already too many in there. And for trap, like I've said, I just don't think that's enjoyable for the vast majority. I just don't think that most people are gonna look at somebody putting an orb on the wall like Singularity and go, wow, I want to do that. Like, I think Singularity, I think his draw is the fact that he's a chase killer at the end of the day, and not just like a super campy kind of, you know, setup kind of thing. Because even the setup characters like Nemesis and also just like Myers as well, just they suffer so hard because of the lack of time that they have in a match. So, like, just, you know, 5-minute games are an average, usually a little bit above that, but on average the games are just quick, so like you don't necessarily have a lot of time to even get up and running. So you're kind of forced into using slowdowns, and then you don't have a lot of build variety, and it's just not great. But like I've said, it is what it is, you know. It is what it is.
It's fine. Honestly, I like them. I think most people prefer them over most killers, but we've kind of had a lot of them in recent memory, so I don't really mind a break and them trying something else. The thing I was really worried about was them going with control. Stealth, I think you can make fine. They're typically not super fun to go against, but they're fine. You can definitely make them way more enjoyable than a lot of other categories. Torment as well also has potentially interesting implications. Sometimes it can be annoying, but sometimes it's interesting. Plague is a really good example of a torment killer. You have an actual affliction and a side objective. You need to factor in when you're going to cleanse, if you're going to cleanse, is she camping, and then I need to be healthy.
That is a valid point. I will say that on paper, Plague is very interesting. The only problem is that I don't think the vast majority of Survivor players even like going against that character, and I haven't seen many Plague mains personally. Like, I don't think that it's a very popular character. I know that there's a few that do enjoy the character that I think are like pretty popular content creators, but in terms of like actually seeing Plagues all around, I think that they have a very low pick rate. I personally just don't like the character that much. They have great cosmetics, but the power to me just doesn't appeal, obviously. Like, it definitely has a very like specific way to play the character. Like, it's like semi-ranged, like, sort of, and you know, it's like it's not super interactive, at least for me personally.
Is safe. Like, so that's the side objective that you have, and that's kind of what Torment is. There's typically an affliction involved. So that is, you know, Plague, for example. Again, Dash is just Wesker, Billy, Blight, any forward, and 50 killers in the game that are like that. At this point, you know what that is. Stealth, Wraith, Ghostface, Myers, killers that get their hits based off of not having a terror radius. They typically have a lot less to do in a chase once it starts, but their initial hit is a lot freer than other killers because they can sneak up on people way more easy. And then there is Control, the most hated category. There is not a single Control killer in the game that is seen as fun to go against for survivors. I'm not going to pretend that nobody doesn't like Trapper or something like that. The whole point is, in terms of making the most fun possible in the game, Control is always at the bottom. Again, there's some psychos that like going against Old Scar Merchant. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't exist, but for the most part, Control is the hardest to make universally fun. And the reason is, when you're designing a Control killer, usually the Control is in control of the killer. The killer dictates when these things are going to happen. Let's compare it to, again, like Wesker, just generic Dash Slop. You know, he's basically John Dash Slop at this point. When Wesker is at a loop, say a TL wall, you round the corner, Wesker uses his first dash to go there. You now both have to make that decision. Is he going to commit to his power on me right now, but I'm facing the window? If I juke, he vaults the window and he's going to feel terrible about himself. Do I not juke? Is he going to expect that? The Wesker needs to go, is he going to stay in front of the window? Is he going to juke? Do I need to wait? Like, you've got a second window to do this unless you've got egg or something like that. So those are the interactions happening, and this happens multiple times per chase for everybody. Everyone is making conscious decisions to impact their, you know, skill on the actual match, and you need to read each other as it's happening. It goes beyond 50-50s. It's more analyzing the player you're going against and making an educated guess on what they're going to do based off of their behavior previously in the match. So that's what makes them interesting to me, and that's what makes it interesting to a lot of people, and that's why it is slop, because everyone kind of, at the very least, tolerates it. It's just safe and fine, and that's a proven formula to make things interesting to go against in DBD, and they're...
I do argue that because of Behavior's track record, because of the fact that they've just been dropping absolute doo-doo bombs on us with these horrible chapters like that they come up with on their own and not the licenses, that like I do think that a safe choice would have been a lot better for them and their bottom line, especially because their original chapters have just not been great. Like I've said, I mean, what was the last time we've seen like a really good original killer, right? I mean, the last time we've seen one was, I think, Houndmaster, and that one was one of the worst killers I think we've ever seen in the game. in terms of like their bugginess. Like, I don't even think they're very strong. I don't even think they're even remembered when it comes down to killer discussion. And if that's like if that was the last thing we've had, I gotta say that's pretty sad. Like, it's like, god damn, like that was the, like, how did the heck did they drop the ball on that? And that makes me concerned for this angel killer type of thing going on as well, because it's like, if they're saying, if we're being sort of told, hey, this is a pirate, and then they look nothing like a pirate, and then they have like a dog, and you're like, okay, but huh? Like, like the second you say pirate, people already sort of imagine, you know, in their minds like what that would look like, and to just go around and not even have anything aquatic involved with that is just beyond my comprehension. I mean, golly, they could have, like, if they were consulting Disney and they were able to get the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then you had forgot his name, but he had like that octopus head thing or whatever with the tentacle beard. If he, like, if that was the pirate killer, right? If they just sat around and said that's the pirate killer we're getting, I guarantee they probably would have had a much better reception than that. I mean, I gotta say. So that's my concern number one. Two, the dashing and it being just the same as everybody likes. It's like, hey, you know, if people like it, why not? You know, to me, they need it. Like, the behavior's not doing too hot lately, so at least that would be a W on their end, you know what I mean? Everybody likes it, cool, you know, keep it going. But now that we've taken that out of the equation, my concern now is, like, how are they going to put out this idea, obviously, and then on top of that, what's gonna be the top voted? Because Control already is not great, and then, like I've said before, this whole stalking thing, like, we have terrible stealth killers. Like, they have no chase, no anything. They can get their hits, but then, you know, obviously, if we take into account the state of the game, the healing meta and stuff like that, they're not going to be well received from the start. I don't really imagine. I think they're going to suffer really badly from a lot of the things that are being added in the game if it's just going to be a stealth killer again. So the only thing that we have now is like Torment, and then even Torment just doesn't look too hot either. So it's like, I don't know. I'm a bit concerned for it. You know, that's sort of my take on it. I'm concerned.
Combined with wanting just something different, but Torment seems to be what we're going to get. That's interesting. Again, it's going to have Torment and probably some other supplemental power as well, but I do think the theme, which is basically like a biblical angel type thing with a form of like torment or mental anguish or something, or like a fear mechanic. It's like a, you know, it's one of those biblically accurate angels you can't look at because it's terrifying. Like, all that shit. That seems...
Those ideas that Scott has, I gotta say, is interesting. And I would hope that if the torment part is a bit more like Pyramid Head in that kind of way, where it's like a status effect, it's applied, or maybe similar to Unknown, where it's like applied and stuff like that, you know. And maybe like it's the inverse of Unknown, where you don't want to look at it, because if you do, you lose your mind, which is, I think, biblically accurate, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's like, you don't want to look at it, or because you can look at it, you'd like, what the heck is that? And then you like get scared or whatever. That to me makes sense. That to me makes sense. I think that would be an interesting concept. Now, obviously, we gotta once again just take it with a grain of salt. Now, I will say, like, I think that the dash ability would have been the safest choice for behavior as a whole, because I mean, if it's enjoyable, but it's being, you know, controlled essentially by the player base. So if the player base is directly saying like, hey, they want Torment and a something else, you know, which, if we're going by the fact that it's saying Torment with stalking, which kind of sounds lame, or stalking with Punishing Heart. I think the Punishing Heart sounds kind of cool. If you put it all together, it says that the action begets the torment, which sounds a little bit more like Pyramid Head, which is kind of fun for me as a Pyramid Head main, but that's a whole nother story. Either way, I will say, hopefully we'll get an interesting killer. Those are my thoughts, really. Original video linked in the description. Check out the ways to support the channel. Consider following on Twitch and TikTok for more content, and to watch me play the killer live. I'll see you guys in the next video.